Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Prophetic Marriage Ministry. My name is Shannon, if this is your first time, and I want to welcome you to my channel. So I want to get right into it. The reason why you feel heavy on this kingdom spouse journey is because your purpose is weighty like heavy. It is literally going to be the thing to push you into your destiny. It is going to push your spouse into their destiny. And that's why it feels like you are literally pushing a boulder, and sometimes it feels so heavy that you can't carry it. And no, you cannot carry it on your own. And that's why God is asking you to lean on him during this process, because it is not going to be easy. It is not going to be a walk in the park. It is not going to be a dainty feeling. You're pushing past so many things that have been put in place. And I'm going to list down the things that have been put in place as to why this experience feels so heavy. So number one, you are breaking curses and pulling down strongholds. And this is a lot, because if someone has had a curse or a stronghold on their life that has been in place for months, years, and for some of you spouses, or maybe for you personally, it's been in place for decades, it is going to take some prayer and warring and believing and partnering with God. And like I said, we do not have to do this on our own. The main thing that is going to be important in this process is your obedience to God and doing what God has told you to do. So if God has you praying once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, whatever the Lord is asking you to do to break these curses and strongholds, it is vital that you are obedient to this. And I know it can get tiring to pray so many times a day. I know it can get tiring to fast. I know it can get tiring sometimes for do what God has told you to do as it concerns this kingdom spouse journey. But this is important. This is so important, because you have to push past these things. We have to break these barriers that the enemy has placed on our life, on our spouse's life, on the generations. You have to break past these things so that you can fully and beautifully walk into your purpose, walk into your marriage promise. So moving forward, I'm going to give you number 2. God is refining you and pruning you. And if you are the God ordained believing spouse, the Lord is working on you first. The Lord is using you to get yourself to a place where you can mature past your own understanding, where you can mature in God, where God is developing your character. He's developing your thoughts. He is renewing your mind so that you can be a prudent wife, so that you can be a noble husband, so that you can show up for your spouse, so that you can stand in the gap for your spouse. And this is also pruning them, and they don't even realize it. But the Lord is using you to get this process moving, because you have already awakened to the fact that that is your spouse. And y'all, when it comes to changing our character, when it comes to changing our ways, that is hard, because we are peeling back layers of ourselves or shaving off layers of ourselves that no longer fit. There are certain parts of you that no longer can fit within you, because God is doing something else with you. The certain traits that you had in your character may have worked for previous seasons. It may have worked for previous jobs, previous businesses, but you have to change certain things about your mindset, certain ways that you used to think about relationships. God is breaking those barriers and tearing those things down, because you will not be effective in your marriage if you do not allow God to prune you, to refine you, to change you. And changing and pruning and refining, it don't feel good, y'all. It does not feel good, but you have to trust God. This entire process is requiring such a level of trust in God that it is going to make you feel like you are in the twilight zone. Trust me, because the whole time I'm in this process, y'all, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. I feel like God is asking me to do things that are just beyond me, but I trust God. And yes, sometimes I've said, God, are you sure? Do you want me to do that? God, that does not seem fair. How come you want me to apologize first? How come you want me to keep praying for them when I know they ain't praying for me? And God is like, you have to trust and obey. You have to trust and obey. Just like a video that I made about being in your birthing season, you are giving birth, you are in labor. And I know some men watch this channel, but just imagine that it's like a spiritual giving labor, a spiritual birth. And you can relate to this as well if you are a man, because you're in this process where God is about to deliver something in your life. God is about to deliver the marriage promise of a lifetime. Your marriage will be anointed. You and your spouse are called and chosen according to a high calling in Christ. And your marriage will bring down so many strongholds. It'll change so many things about you that will no longer be able to fit into the ministry, into the destiny that God has for you. So So it's going to feel strange. It's going to feel like, God, what are you doing to me? What are you doing, God? But then when you look back on the whole situation, you can honestly and truly say that the Lord has truly brought you a long way, and you are not the same person that you were before you started this marriage journey. And this is a beautiful thing, y'all. And I promise you, your reward will be great. God will remember you. But right now in this moment, you have to work past this pain. I know the pain doesn't feel good. I know that it is not favorable, but you have to get through this point, because if you don't get through this point, you will not get to your marriage promise. Your spouse may not be acting right. He or she may not be saying the things that you want them to say, but you have to know and believe that God is working in the midst of this. God is working in the midst of the confusion. God is working in the midst of the pain. God is working in the midst of the misunderstandings. God is working in the midst of the doubt. He needs you to be in alignment. As long as you keep your eyes on Jesus, even if you go to God and say, God, my faith is dwindling, but I trust you. God, I don't understand what you're doing, but I trust you. As long as God knows that you trust him, he can work with that and he can continue to move forward. And number 3, God is healing both you and your spouse from past trauma. Now, if any of you can relate to this, I know with me personally, I have experienced certain triggers throughout this process. And I went to God and said, God, why are you having me to deal with this? God, I have already healed through these past things. And God is like, yes, you have healed. Yes, you've gotten to a point where I have delivered you from these pains and traumas. But God has to take you back through it so that he can further refine you, so that he can be sure that you truly are delivered from this process. And if you know you've already been healed from it, yes, it may trigger you, but you've noticed that you're not going through it in the same way that you would have had it been back before the Lord delivered you from it. So this is like a revisit so that God can truly see that you are a different person. And yes, you have healed. Yes, you are a different person. Yes, your character is growing and you are truly moving past those pains and those traumas from your past. But the re-triggering is a sign of further refinement. It's a sign that you have truly graduated from that process, and God is seeing and testing how you are dealing with these triggers, how you are dealing with these things that you have healed from, because your spouse may trigger you in these areas, and you're going to have to know how to deal with it, and you're going to have to know how to not react the same way that you used to react in past circumstances and situations before the Lord healed you from your rejection, before the Lord healed you from the abandonment, the trauma of a past relationship. You have to understand and know that this spouse is not the same as the previous relationships that you have had. This is your marriage promise. This is your God-ordained husband, your God-ordained wife. You cannot deal with this person in the same way. There is a heavy anointing on this relationship, on this marriage, on this covenant, and the Lord has to heal you and your spouse. And even if there are things that you may not have healed from yet, God is dealing with those things right now in this moment, right now in the separation, right now in the process of you walking through this marriage promise and getting to the point where God can finally bring you two together. Hold on just a little while longer. It will get better. Also, y'all, you and your spouse are being brought closer to Jesus. And I understand some of the spouses are unsaved or may have strayed away from God, but this process will bring you closer to God, because you are going to have to lean on God and communicate with God and worship God more than you have in a long time, because this is something that is really pressing you. It is pressing you. It is stretching you. It is molding you. It is shaping you. And during this time, you need to stay really close to Jesus. We should always stay close to Jesus. But when there are moments in our lives that we are being pressed into a different level of destiny, we really need Jesus even more than we already really do. So I don't want you to be discouraged at the fact that, you feel like you have to stay in God's presence for so much longer. But God is like, hey, I love when you're in my presence. God is enjoying this time with you. He loves when we yield on to him and when we cling to him and we hold on to him so tightly, because those are the moments where we get to know him even more. And in this divine separation, you can help draw your spouse to Christ by praying for them, by sending random messages of saying that you love them, that you're thinking about them, that you care for them, and they will experience the love of Christ through you, and they will remember that, and that will honestly and truly stick to their hearts and their minds. And then when you all come together, you will be the influence, you will be the drive that they need to be drawn back to Christ, and it'll be easy because the Spirit of God will enable them. So do not be a spiritual pest. Do not feel like you got to drag this person to Christ. Do not feel like you have to drag them back to Christ Christ if they have already been saved, because the Spirit of God will enable them, but you're just already kind of paving the way and making them feel comfortable so that when God does move in fully, they'll already be receptive to God's love. They'll already be receptive to receiving Jesus 100%. And y'all, ministries and businesses will be birthed. For a lot of you, your marriage will be a pivotal point in your ministry because you two will be doing ministry together. And by you two doing ministry together, you two will come up with so many different business ideas. Businesses will come out of the ministry, and there will be so many other people attached to this marriage promise that you will help save and to set free and to help guide these people into the plan and purpose that God has for their lives. So we have to keep going, y'all, because it's just not about you. This is bigger than you. This is way bigger than your spouse. Once you guys come together in holy matrimony, once you guys have been put through the fire, once you guys have been refined, God can be able to use you. He will use this marriage, and it's just not a marriage. This is a covenant. This is a purpose. This is something that is already stamped in the heavens. God needs you two to come together so that everything else attached to it can come back to Christ. And I just want to remind y'all that the devil hates marriage. So if you think this process is going to be cute, it's going to be dainty, it's going to be so beautiful and delicate, absolutely not. Did you hear everything I just mentioned earlier? Ain't none of this stuff cute, light, dainty, prissy. None of this is none of that. So just get that out your mind. Why me? Why is this so hard? And I understand, y'all. We all have feelings and we all are going through this refining process, and it hurts sometimes. But when you stay close to the Father and stop focusing your attention so much on your spouse, then God will give you the revelation that you need to stand tall and to stay strong. Because y'all, obedience is so much better than sacrifice. You do not want to be disobedient to God because you will not get all the things that He has for you. So I want to read Deuteronomy chapter 28, and this is labeled blessings for obedience. It says, if you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all His commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. You will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, and the crops of your land, and the young of your livestock, the calves of your herds, and the lambs of your flocks. Your basket and your kneading trough will be blessed. You will be blessed when you come in and blessed when you go out. So it is so important to be obedient. I highly advise for each and every one of you to read Deuteronomy chapter 28 in its entirety so that you can see the benefits of being obedient to God and how much blessings it'll bring upon your life. I want to thank y'all so much for sowing into my ministry. For those of you who have sown, we have a great time in coaching. So much revelation happens, so much understanding, and I am truly and honestly blessed by being able to speak to each and every one of you. If anybody else wants coaching, I will leave my email down below. Shoot me an email and let me know, and I will be certainly glad to speak with you. And also, if you want us to sow into this word or sow into the ministry, I will leave that information down in the description box below. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Prophetic Marriage Ministry, and I will see you again in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment and tell me how this video resonates with you. All right, bye-bye.